Hey, welcome. Today we're jumping right into a huge, kind of behind the scenes change in UK employment law. Now, I know it sounds a bit technical, but trust me, this is a big deal. We're going to break down how the whole system for protecting workers' rights has been totally reshaped, moving away from a bunch of different groups into just one. I mean, seriously, have you ever thought about it? Who's the one making sure you get paid minimum wage, or that an employment agency isn't messing you around? For the longest time, the answer was, well, it was complicated. You had this whole alphabet soup of different agencies and bodies. But that's all changed, and that's exactly what we're digging into today. All right, here's the game plan. First, we'll talk about the big power shift. Then we'll look at the specific law that kicked everything off, the Employment Rights Act 2025. We'll see how they consolidated everything, look at the crucial cleanup regulations that make it all work, and then, most importantly, figure out what this all means for you. Okay, so let's get into it. A massive shift in power. You see, for years, if you had a problem at work in the UK, where you went for help really depended on what the problem was. A minimum wage issue, that's one door. A problem with a temp agency, that's a completely different door. It was this complex, kind of confusing web of oversight, and honestly, it could be a nightmare for both workers and businesses to figure out. But a quiet revolution has been happening to fix all that. And this is the thing that started it all, the Employment Rights Act 2025. When this law got what's called royal assent, basically when it became official, it wasn't just another page in the law books. Nope. This set the stage for a total redesign of how workers' rights are protected across the entire country. So let's put a name to the big player here, the Employment Rights Act 2025. This thing is a beast. It covers everything from zero-hours contracts to trade unions, a major, major overhaul. But for what we're talking about today, the really critical part is Part 5, which is all about enforcement. Now, you look at the official language here from the Act's preamble, and it's surprisingly simple, right? An act to make provision about the enforcement. What that's really saying is, we're not just tweaking the rules anymore. This is about tearing down the old system of how the rules are policed and building something new from the ground up. It's about taking a system with all these different moving parts and turning it into one single coherent machine. And that brings us right to the heart of the matter. Consolidation. The big idea was to take all that power that was spread out across all these different agencies and bring it all under one roof, create a single point of responsibility. So, how different is the new way from the old way? Well, let's take a look. This really lays it out perfectly. On the left, you had the old system. You had specialized bodies like the Gangmasters and Labor Abuse Authority, which had a very specific job, protecting vulnerable workers in places like farms or food factories. But now, look at the right. All of that is gone. The power now sits with the Secretary of State, who uses enforcement officers to get the job done. It's a total shift from a scattered, specialized system to one central command. And this wasn't some subtle behind-the-scenes shift. No, it's right there in black and white. Section 148 of the Act is basically the off switch for the old system. It says, flat out, that bodies like the Director of Labor Market Enforcement and the Gangmasters Authority are abolished. Just like that. Poof. The old guard is officially gone. Okay, but getting rid of the old agencies creates a massive new headache. Think about it. Their names are written into dozens, maybe hundreds of older laws. It's like having broken links all over a website. You can't just delete the old pages. You have to go back and methodically update every single link. And that's where this crucial cleanup job comes in, using something called consequential amendments. So what on earth are consequential amendments? The best way to think about it is like a find and replace function in a giant document. Or even better, it's like updating a contact in your phone, right? If your friend gets a new number, you don't just try to remember it. You go into your contacts, find their name, and replace the old number with a new one. That's exactly what these amendments do for the entire UK legal code, making sure all the old laws now point to the new person in charge. Let's look at a real-world example to make this super clear. This is from the old 2006 Gangmasters regulations. Before all this change, the law was filled with references to the authority. Everyone knew that meant the Gangmasters and Labor Abuse Authority. But now, that term is basically a dead link. It doesn't exist anymore. And here is the fix, the find and replace in action. The 2026 regulations that we're really focusing on give a very simple command. Find the word authority and substitute it with Secretary of State. It's a tiny change in wording, but it's absolutely vital to make the new system legally sound. And we're not just talking about one or two edits. This simple find and replace job has to be done dozens and dozens of times just within this one set of regulations for Gangmasters appeals. It's done for definitions, for headings, for every little procedural rule. It's this incredibly meticulous but totally essential process that has to happen across the entire body of UK labor law. Okay, so we've been deep in the weeds of the legal mechanics, right? The how of this whole thing. But what does it all mean in the real world? For businesses, for regular workers, for HR folks, why should you care? Let's talk about the practical impact of going from many enforcers down to just one. And the scope here is just massive. I mean, this is just a small sample from the 2025 Act. Laws covering everything from how employment agencies operate, to the national minimum wage, to the licensing of gangmasters. It all now falls under this one single enforcement umbrella. It's a huge centralization of power to investigate and penalize wrongdoing across a massive chunk of the economy. When you boil it all down, the goal is pretty clear: create simplicity and efficiency. For businesses, the hope is a more consistent regulatory environment. For workers, it should mean there's a much clearer path to get help if something goes wrong without having to figure out which one of 5 different agencies to call. It's all about creating one system, one point of contact, and one enforcement strategy for the entire UK labor market. And that really leaves us with the big unanswered question, doesn't it? By bringing all this power into one place, have we created a more powerful, effective shield for workers' rights? Or have we just created a single giant bureaucracy that might be even harder to navigate than the smaller specialized agencies it replaced? That's the real test as this new era of labor law enforcement gets underway.